Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Kevin McGrath. Thanks for being on the show, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Whitney. Glad to be here.
Yeah, Kevin began his commercial real estate career in 2007. And in that time, he's been involved in leasing, acquisition, and disposition of more than $1 billion in industrial real estate throughout the United States. Kevin had a successful 12-year career as a senior vice president with CBRE, specializing in industrial brokerage, and in 2019 switched to investing full-time as he became the principal with Cardinal Industrial, and an owner and operator of 12 million square feet of industrial property. He is deeply passionate about investing in real estate as he sees it as a vehicle to produce passive income that's creating time freedom. Kevin, welcome to the show. I mean, you have a great background, and I know you're going to be a great guest. Looking forward to this conversation. I know, I want to hear a little about your background, how you transitioned, from CBRE to, getting in as a even passive and also active, but then just your specialized niche too in industrial, and how it's been working right now, through COVID, pre versus post COVID. But get us started a little bit with your background and your movement into, the active space.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on again, Wendy. I got started in real estate, commercial real estate in 2007, like you said, in brokerage in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from originally. And my niche at the time was still is what was industrial real estate. When I got into it, Wendy, I didn't know anything about industrial. It just so happened that the team I interviewed with, I got along with them well. Our personalities meshed, and they had a spot on their team for a junior broker. So in a way, I just kind of fell into industrial. And I'm sitting here where I am today. I'm glad I did. There were certainly some bumpy times getting started, because I started in 2007. Had a 1 year of salary, then came off salary in the fall of 2008, which if you remember, that was when the market collapsed and the start of the Great Recession. So it was not a great time to get started in real estate, especially coming off of salary going on to 100% commission. But was able to fight through it, to persist, and it was really helpful to have two senior level partners who helped me a lot and were great mentors for me, and continued with a successful brokerage career. And fast forward to about 2018, I got the bug to start investing passively in real estate. I was tired of my money not doing much in the stock market. I was investing conservatively in index funds, and it really wasn't going anywhere. And I wanted some passive income that I could really provide kind of a safety net or a cushion, because of the grind of brokerage, where you're starting over every year at zero. And I got started in, like I said, in 2018, had some friends who were syndicators full time, started learning more about what they were doing, all the tax advantages that were involved. And I knew that this was something that I wanted to get into full time. And I made the leap about really the spring of 2019, when I left CBRE and joined Cardinal Industrial, which owns about 12 million square feet of industrial across the country, mainly in the Midwest and the Southeast. And it's been a great ride since.
Nice. Well, grateful just to hear some of your story. I find that most of us, didn't have a direct path to becoming an operator or buying large commercial real estate. There's something else we were doing or something that led us there. It wasn't like you're 5 years old, typically thinking, you know what, I'm going to be a syndicator. So, it's interesting just to hear your story, and definitely a great background to become an operator and get into this space. No doubt about it. Let's dive into just the industrial world a little bit, and why. I know you said you fell into it as a junior broker, but even at that point, obviously that's post COVID and all that stuff, why industrial versus, multifamily or senior living or, anything else, all the other asset classes that you could have gotten into?
Well, I think what industrial has done, and I'll talk about it post-COVID, kind of where we are today, and not to pit one against the other, because I still invest passively in multifamily, and there's several great vehicles to invest in throughout the different sectors in commercial real estate. But I think what industrial has proved over the last really 6-8 months and since COVID, how resilient it is. Supposedly right now we're in a recession, but in my world, it's anything but. I mean, it's probably as active or competitive today than it's ever been any time over the last 20 years. And a lot of that is because of e-commerce. You've probably read a lot about it or heard a lot about e-commerce. And I'm sure you've had a lot of hands-on experience buying goods and services over the internet. And that's been the absolute game changer for industrial. We can talk more about that in some of the stats and research that have come out since COVID. So at the end of 2019, e-commerce, it accounted for roughly about 15% of all retail sales. And it was growing at about a 15% clip year over year for the last 10 years. So it was really steady growth. And what COVID has done is really accelerated that. This year, in the 12 months since, e-commerce now is going to account for about 25% of all retail sales. So there was a huge jump because of COVID, because people couldn't get out and shop, and they were forced to buy products online. And I think what we're going to see through the holidays, this holiday season, is even more of a jump. I mean, it's going to be absolutely going gangbusters for these retailers, and the amount of, they call it adoption, how many new users are coming and buying things online. And there's a stat that recently came out that e-commerce sales are projected to hit about 700 billion this year. By 2025, that number is going to go up to 1.5 trillion. And what that means, Whitney, is that $800 million delta is going to create a demand of 1 billion square feet of industrial space that's going to be needed. And it's such a huge, significant number, because it doesn't matter if it's industrial, multifamily, or office. What drives investors and what we do is tenant demand. You need tenant demand. And that's what e-commerce is giving industrial real estate, is just significant tenant demand that developers really can't keep up building enough warehouse space before it gets absorbed.
Can you talk about that tenant just a little bit? Maybe just how that's changed over the last year or two, and then through COVID, or maybe how you see that changing over the next few years as there's such a demand. Is it more just warehouse space now, or was it are there other types of tenants that you're looking for?
The biggest driver, again, is e-commerce and e-commerce users. And again, this could be the Amazon, Walmart's, any retailer that has an online presence could be considered an e-commerce user or occupier. They account for about 25% of the overall industrial base or industrial users. So it's only about a fourth of all industrial users. And what we're seeing is it's really the rising tide lifts all boats theory, that these e-commerce users are growing at such a clip. It's creating such demand that these other industrial tenants, such as manufacturers, it could be retailers, but retailers that are distributing to stores. It could be third-party logistics companies, which are, if you're not familiar, they are basically when a company outsources their warehousing or their logistics. They are having to go out and find space and compete with these e-commerce companies. And what it's doing, it's raising rental rates, and it's causing these other users to go out and lease space that the e-commerce companies are not. So it's they're being driven down to the Class B product, and the e-commerce users, a lot of them are occupying only Class A product.
What's the biggest risk right now? Let's say for a passive investor, when investing with an operator that's purchasing industrial property.
I would say the biggest risk is a lot of the industrial buildings. I shouldn't say a lot. I mean, it just depends which type of product. But what we acquire mainly, Whitney, is single tenant assets, leased long term to credit worthy tenants. And sometimes when the lease expires, tenants don't renew. So I would say that's probably the biggest downside is if you're investing in a single tenant asset and the tenant does not renew and moves out. Now, having said that, we go into a deal when we acquire it knowing that this could happen. So we set aside a significant amount of reserves. And then also the tenant must give us notice, typically 6 to 9 months before the lease expires, if they're going to renew or not. So that 6 or 9 months is kind of a buffer where it allows us to go out and try to lease the property out to another tenant.
What is the typical time it would take to release something? I know there's so many factors there, type of property and location and all these things. But when you're just looking at a property or you are underwriting something like that, and you're trying to calculate that amount of reserves that you need for that time, how do we do that? Or, if I'm a passive investor looking to say, I want to invest with you, Kevin, well, I may ask you, well, how do you know how long, we need to account for that vacancy and how much reserves do you have?
Yeah, like you said before, it depends on the market. It also depends on the vacancy size. So if it's 100,000 square feet in an A location in a first or second tier market, you're looking at maybe 4 to 6 months right now. Versus if it's a 800,000 square foot huge distribution center in a tertiary market, it could be 12 to 18 months. So we know that going in. Typically, we hold about 6 months of reserves, and then working with our lenders as well. I would say we 6 to 9 months reserves. And that's in addition to the 6 to 9 months that we typically have to go out and market the property if the tenant doesn't exercise the renewal option. Having said that, all of this happens pretty infrequently. We'll have maybe one vacancy like this every couple of years. It's not very frequent that it happens.
Nice. And I think typically it's pretty long-term leases, right?
They are. Yeah. And it just depends what operator and kind of their appetite and their investors' appetite for risk. We're looking for 5 years of lease term or longer. And, depending on the situation, maybe we'll go a little bit shorter, but on average, when it's 5 years of lease term or longer.
In the just the current state of the market, or just with COVID, everything that's happening right now, are you all buyers, sellers? Are you sitting on the sideline? What's your all's take?
We are buyers and sellers, and it's like I said before, super, super competitive right now. There's so much capital pouring into industrial real estate. A lot of it at the highest level, institutional money, where their cost of capital is so inexpensive compared to ours that it's hard to compete. So we have to differentiate ourselves a little bit. We'll go into maybe markets where they won't. So second and tertiary markets, we'll buy product that they won't. Maybe a little bit older, Class B, a metal building that maybe isn't aesthetically as pleasing to the eye. We just have to do things a little bit differently right now to find deals. We have to look harder. We have to look a little bit longer. We have to rely on our broker relationships to do so. But it's a really competitive environment. So that's why it's a good selling environment. I mean, we are, the nice thing about being with a kind of a smaller boutique firm is that we can be agile. And if we get an unsolicited offer for a property and it makes sense, we'll sell it. And so, yeah, we're actively selling and buying right now.
For an industrial property, how should I, if I'm fixing to passively invest, what should I be asking to make sure that operator is prepared for a potential downturn?
Yeah, I think, well, I guess we're in a downturn right now. So some would say, but I think it's important to have, again, reserves. Going into a building in a market that has enough users in the adjacent area that if the tenant did move out, that there's going to be enough demand nearby that it can be backfilled quickly and relatively easily. I think those are really two important things. But I mean, industrial in a sense is a lot more hands off from a management point of view than it would be for a multifamily syndicator such as yourself. Way less. Again, way less issues as far as trying to go out, the turnover and dealing with the tenants. It's a little less management intensive, so it makes it a little bit easier to scale on the industrial side without having a huge management presence.
No doubt about it. Very different type of operation, for sure. So, going back just a little bit and thinking about, your path to becoming an operator and becoming, active versus the high-paying W-2 to being a passive investor. What's really been the hardest part of that process for you?
A couple things. First, having enough gumption to actually do it. It's something I was kicking around for a year. And I remember I would leave quite a bit my W-2 job. And it was, looking back on it, I was making a lot of money. I was comfortable. I was established. But I would leave almost every single day with this kind of pit in my stomach, knowing that, there was something else that I wanted to do. So actually, having enough courage to go out and actually do it was the tough part. And then actually, once I got started, what was most daunting for me was raising the capital, or at least trying to. Now, what made it a little bit easier for me was I had the relationships from the brokerage side to actually dig up the deals. That made it easier. So it made sense for me, and it was more synergistic to join a firm that needed deals, that actually needed the deals and had the investor bench where they could fund the deals, but they just needed more of them. So again, it made sense from that standpoint, where I could bring the relationships and bring more deals, and then there was the equity that was waiting to fund them.
It's neat to hear. I mean, like you talk about having the courage, to step out there, and you think, so many, may or may not have that high paying W-2, but it's very difficult to step out and say, you know what, you felt that pit in your stomach, like you talked about, and just stepping out to make that happen. Any pushback, family, anybody saying, wait a minute, Kevin, you're crazy. How did you handle that?
No, I mean, I would say, yeah, my family was surprised probably. No one said anything to my face. I'm sure behind my back, they were probably thinking I was crazy. But it's been almost 2 years now, and I still get uncomfortable to this day. I mean, there were so many moments, especially that first year, where I was so uncomfortable. And I just know, looking back, that it's kind of going to shape who I am, not only as a business person, but as a person. It's going to make me better. And one of the things I did, Whitney, was to really help me quantify my decision-making. There was an exercise by Tim Ferriss called, I think it was fear setting. And if your listeners Google fear setting Tim Ferriss, it's just a really good exercise to, again, quantify whatever risk you want to take, whether it's switching to a high paying, or leaving a high paying job, or whatever it is what you want to do that involves some sort of risk and makes you uncomfortable. It just helps lay it out, and that really helped me, again, to quantify it. And really what it did was, at the end of the day, if it didn't work out, I can always go back to where I was before, and in doing so, I would become a better broker, picking up the knowledge that I did along the way. So there was really not as much downside as I probably thought.
Kevin, do you have a couple of daily habits that have helped you achieve success?
Yeah, a few. I exercise 4 to 5 times a week. I do CrossFit. I try to do it at either 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. To have a routine. Meditation has been really important for me. Doing meditation once or twice a day. I recently got into journaling, and that's been really, really helpful for me to get my thoughts and my feelings out where I was repressing them and actually get them on paper. So those three things have been really, really important to alleviate some stress and really fulfill my growth and potential.
Is journaling something you do electronically or like handwriting?
No, I handwrite. Yeah. So I have a book, and some days it's easier to get things out. So, some days I'll have a page or two, other days I'll have just a paragraph, and really whatever is top of mind, you put it on paper. And it's something that I had tried in the past, and I couldn't be very consistent at it. But the last 6 months or so, I've really made an effort. And once I got in the routine and got consistent doing it, it became easier and easier. And I think it's really helped me, again, get things out, because I probably, like most guys, I keep things inward, and it's been, again, really helpful to just be it's freeing and liberating, really, just to get things out.
I meant to ask you, I know we've talked about parts of this, but just from your standpoint, your experience, where do you see just the real estate market in general, say 6 to 12 months from now?
I think industrial, again, continues at its current pace, if not gets even more frantic. I think when the first quarter rolls around and some of the stats come out about how well e-commerce has performed over the holiday season, I think it's going to be even more competitive. It's hard for me to kind of fathom that, but I think so. As far as the other sectors, it's kind of tough to say, Whitney. I'm certainly not an expert in multifamily. I know enough to be dangerous, but when all the we're taping this in early November, when all the government stimulus and everything, when all of it goes away, and we go through the winter, and maybe the COVID cases keep increasing, it might be a tough first half of the year for some multifamily, at least on the occupancy, and probably definitely not any rent growth. So I think in the long run, multifamily is a great play, but the next 12 months might be a little bumpy. And but I think for people to just have some patience, and I think that the storm will pass over for sure.
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I think if you're expecting much rent growth over the next year and don't have any reserves or enough reserves, you may be hurting, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But hopefully not. Well, no one knows for sure. But what's your best source for meeting new investors right now?
Podcast, yeah, content, and word of mouth. Yeah, just asking people who they know. I think those are the three best sources. But podcasts, getting on podcasts are pretty remarkable source of letting people know who you are and what you're doing.
I agree. And what's been the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Two things, I think. Persistence, never giving up, because so often in what we do, in really business and life in general, you hear so many objections, you hear so many no. Just being able to push through that, having some thick skin, and then also always be open to learning and thirsting for knowledge, as cheesy as it might sound. But I'm really into personal development, and the more I've gotten into it over the years, I mean, there's a direct correlation to what success I've had. There's no doubt about it.
Is there a specific resource that has helped you just with personal development? I also just think it's directly related to, your business success and things like that. But what about you? Have you just improved, as far as personal development?
Yeah. So I think for people, I guess something's easy people can do is whenever they're driving, always be listening to either podcasts or, CDs in your car. I mean, that's something that easy they can do. I think having a morning routine is really, really important. I recommend Hal Elrod's book, I think the Morning Miracle.
The Miracle Morning. Yeah.
Miracle Morning. There you go. That's a great resource, and not too difficult to implement. It might take someone who doesn't have a morning routine a month or so to get used to it. But once they do, it would be tough for them to go back to their old morning habits. I mean, it really is that much of a game changer, I think, to create, to have success during the day. So that's what I would recommend something someone can do and pick up right away.
How do you like to give back?
I like volunteering, being hands-on. I would say that the organization I'm most active in is Special Olympics. I've been a coach there in multiple sports over the years, and it's a great organization.
Nice. Well, Kevin, I'm grateful for your time. Pleasure to have met you and just really hear your story going, from a junior broker, especially when you became a junior broker, 2007, 8, and through that time, relying on a commission at the worst time, probably to rely on a commission in the real estate business that we can remember. And then moving into passive and active and just in industrial space, I don't have too many guests that focus on industrial. So it's great to hear your take and just what's happening in that space right now. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Sure. The best way to get in touch with me is my personal website. It's McGrathIndustrial.com. And I have an ebook there on industrial real estate and a little bit into passive investing that could be a good free resource for them, and as well as some other content. So my email address is on the website as well. And if anyone has any questions or wants to get on our distribution list to see our deals, all that information is on the website.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.